Ohio State, Michigan, the greatest rivalry in sports deserves the greatest debate in sports. Monday, February 17th at 6 p.m. Eastern Time on the main channel. It's the Ohio State, Michigan All Everything Debate with me, taking your calls all night if it takes all night. I'm pulling no punches, so beware. Bring your best intel. It's the Ohio State, Michigan All Everything Debate. It will be epic. February 17th, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Be there.
Hello, guys. That was a message from Mark Rogers, the leader here at MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. This is the Texas channel at the voice of college football. So please give us a like. Please give us your subscription as well. Also, again, check out the channels. Check out the Ohio State Voice of College Football channel. Check out the Michigan Voice of College Football channel. Like we said, that debate's happening February 17th. So in a week, that debate will be going on. Might even overlap with our show a little bit. So go join there and then come back and join us. We really appreciate you guys doing that. Today, we are going to be talking spring battles on the defensive side of the ball. Remember, guys, we talked about the spring battles on the offensive side of the ball. Let's jump into the defense, and let's talk about this, because I think this is the main question about this defense, the defensive line. And it's not the edges, it's the interior. So, Gerald, my question to you is, who is going to be the starting defensive tackles for this Texas Longhorns team?
My hot take is that person might not be on campus yet. I think Texas may, depending on what we still don't know what spring practice is going to be, right? But Texas has already gone into the portal like 3 times. I think they've got Beverly Shaw and then the kid from Ohio State that came in. So might be one of those 3 guys. I mean, Texas went and did a very solid job of creating a platoon of guys last year. And then, Alfred Collins and Vernon Broughton just decided to make that jump. And that's my favorite new game to play is like, how is Texas going to replace these 2 guys on the defensive line and then 2 guys just step up and have career years? So, I mean, I would be shocked if it wasn't one of those 3 transfer guys, but also Justice Terry is coming to campus and he's a big son of a gun. There's no other way to say it. He's coming in. Alex January is another kid that I think could have a big jump from year to year. He's already got the size 6'5", 320, I think 320, 325, something like that coming in. So he's got the body, he's got the type. And again, Texas has seen Kenny Baker really do some wonders this last offseason. We didn't know who was going to replace Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy. 2 guys that have been on campus for 4 years had massive jumps in their final years. And so I wonder if Alex January, maybe Melvin Hills is another guy who, he was a hot commodity around the SEC. There's a reason why basically every SEC program wanted him. So to answer your question, probably if I had to put a fine point on it, probably Brevard and Shaw, I think would probably be my 1 and 2. But I wouldn't be shocked to see if Alex January has a big jump this offseason.
No, I don't disagree with that. And I actually don't disagree with your initial take. Like, I think someone will jump in that spring portal window and Texas will be all over that person, whoever that may be. We don't have any insight on that as of now. I think that's a little bit too early to speculate. Listen, about 2 weeks before transfer portal hits in the spring, you're going to know some names just because there'll be guys probably linked that were from the state of Texas. That's usually how that works. So we'll have to see what that is. But yeah, Hero Canoe, Travis Shaw, Cole Brevard, all transfers. And get this. This is crazy just looking at this room because if the transfer portal does not exist, that's 3 transfers. Then you bring in 3 freshmen. You had 2 guys. I repeat, you had 2 guys on the roster if you get rid of freshmen and transfers. You had Alex January and, like you said, Melvin Hills. That is it. So we were saved by the transfer portal. I don't like having to do that. I think this is the only position on the team really where they kind of had to get desperate. I'm going to be straight up honest about that. Like, I like the guys we got, but they were going to have to take whoever jumped into the portal because you couldn't go in with 5 guys at that position. You can't do that. So I like the guys. I don't disagree with that. I think Travis Shaw by far has the highest upside of anyone brought in. I don't think it's close. There's a reason this guy was a 5-star coming out of high school. Yeah. And he's like the first big time guy we've ever gotten from the state of North Carolina too. Like if you look at that, there's not many guys state of North Carolina for football that we go in and get. He's the biggest guy we've gotten. So hopefully he pans out and we start giving a pipeline there because they're starting to get better at football as well in that state.
Yeah. And Mac Brown leaving that state, it's curious to see what Bill Belichick will do recruiting in state. But if Texas can continue to make those inroads, it'll definitely pay dividends.
No, 100%. And I'm a big fan of Alex January because I'm a big fan of what we're going to hear during this spring. Guys, the name that was constantly said during the spring of last year was Alex January. It was like, wow, this guy can play a little bit. This guy can play a little bit. He didn't play as much as I thought he was going to personally play after hearing that, but he did play at the end of the season. They started to rely on him a little bit more.
And I think that was probably a function of Broughton and Collins playing better than we anticipated. I don't think it was a January thing. I think it's just like those two guys finally lived up to the billing. And I think that, again, Alex January is a guy who I really want to see make a big jump. He's already got the size. He's already got, go watch his high school tape. He's one of those dudes you're like, God, it's unfair that somebody had to go to calculus and then have to try to block this guy. It's just completely unfair.
Yeah, 100%. Melvin Hills is definitely a little bit more raw. Like you said, it's a good prospect, a little bit more raw. And then guys coming in, Justice Terry, Myron Charles, which he could play inside or outside. I think he's at that point. We're going to know when the roster comes out, just look at the weight on him.
Yeah.
If he got skinnier, he's going to play edge. If he got bigger, he's going to play defensive tackle. That's pretty simple. And I think he can be a good player.
And I would be shocked if they didn't try to bulk him up. Granted, you have to see where his body goes and how he how his body adjusts to it. But with what Texas has in the defensive end edge room versus what Texas has in the interior room, I would be shocked if they didn't say, "Hey, have a peanut butter sandwich before you go to bed and come to practice in the morning."
Yeah, and then this guy, I'm all in on. I saw the picture, and Josiah Sharma's my dude. Like, I see that guy with the widest shoulders I've ever seen on any human being. Like, those are Olympic bodybuilding type shoulders. They're just wide as hell. You know what that reminded me of? If anyone wants to go back and look at young Dwight Howard, like those type of shoulders. Like I've never seen anything like it.
Set him up with an NIL deal just to rent out the space between his shoulders as some sort of billboard. Like just the body on that kid is ridiculous.
Yeah, so I'm a big fan. If he can put on some healthy weight, I could see him playing pretty quickly. I think Justice Terry's in that same mold as well. He's got a pretty good body that can put on a lot of weight, and obviously he's got a very, very high ceiling. I don't know about the floor about him right now, but the ceiling is super high. But Josiah Sharma is one of the underrated guys in this class that I think you're going to see play a lot more than you think. And I would agree. Right now, Travis Shaw to me is going to start for this football team. I don't know who that other guy is going to be. If I had to guess, I think actually Justice Terry's going to start. I just have a feeling they're going to throw him in and allow him to learn on the job. And we see this every year with Texas. There's always that one guy as a freshman that plays a lot. Anthony Hill a couple years ago played a lot as a freshman, played well. You saw last year, you saw Colin Simmons and also Ryan Wingo, especially down the stretch, got a lot more run. I think you're going to see that from Justice Terry. And I think because of the lack of depth at this position, you're going to have to see it earlier from him.
Yeah, I think there's probably a world in which you play the transfer guys earlier and then as Terry, January, the rest of these young cats, because it's going to be a speed of the game thing for them, especially at defensive line. I'm going to be like, nobody listening or watching this is going to be shocked by this, but what high school offensive lines are doing versus what college offensive lines are going to be doing to that guy, going to be vastly different. So letting him get his feet underneath him, I think, and especially outside of Ohio State, Texas's non-conference schedule gives you a little bit of opportunity to get closer to the speed of the game and adjust with it. Again, we don't know what Ohio State's going to be. They're still going to be Ohio State, but like giving Texas the opportunity in week 2, not in week 1, right, to slowly bring a guy up to speed is going to be a big advantage for him.
No, I agree. I think it'll be slow, but that's definitely the biggest question mark on the defensive line and probably honestly on the team. I think the two biggest are tied in interior defensive line. Let's jump out to me. I think this might be the strongest group on the whole entire team, and that's the edge position. Ethan Burke, Colton Vosick, Colin Simmons, Trey Moore, Zena Umulazulu, who I think is going to play a lot more this year. That guy has a body type for it now. Smith Arogbo and Lance Jackson, which are both top 10 at their positions coming in. I think Lance Jackson is either 1 or 2. What do you think of that group?
Yeah, my notes, I said, does Texas have the best defensive end room in the country? That's the start of my notes for this. And I think you're absolutely right. You start with Trey Moore and Colin Simmons, right, on opposite sides of that defense. And I'm going to be curious to see. It's going to be a pick your poison for a lot of offensive schemes. Like, who do you want to block? Because the other one is going to get off. Because we saw that happen later in the season when Colin Simmons started to come on and defenses started to focus more on him. That's when Trey Moore's production shot up as far as sacks go, right? And Trey Moore was the lunch pail guy all year. I'm going to blow up an option on my own kind of guy. And that's not Ethan Burke and Colton Vosick are two guys that incredible talents, incredible athletes that I think on any other team you're talking and you're waving the flag. Like, these two guys are incredible. They just happen to be on the field with Colin Simmons, who's a surefire NFL guy, and Trey Moore, who's got a ton of potential. And again, I think the defensive end room for Texas has an opportunity to be a differentiator. The SEC is going to be a very quarterback-heavy league next year, and so having the ability to get after the quarterback consistently takes a lot of pressure off of the rest of your defense, right? If Colin Simmons and Trey Moore are routinely winning one-on-ones on the outside, that creates numbers advantages for Texas. We saw it last night in the Super Bowl. If you can get pressure on a quarterback with minimal blitzing, the pendulum of advantage swings way in the direction, no matter how talented your quarterback is. If you can get pressure with 4 or 5 guys, then your advantage on defense is going to be massive. And so I think having these guys and being able to say, I think the biggest advantage Texas has is like being able to have healthy legs at the edge in the late third quarter and the fourth quarter, right? Because you play Trey Moore, you play Colin Simmons, and then guys like Burke and Vassick or some of these younger guys come in and they've got fresh legs and fresh bodies going against the offensive lineman that's been having to chase Colin Simmons for 45 minutes. Like that is something that I think we're going to see as an advantage for Texas moving down the season next year.
No, 100%. And I think the pitch for Trey Moore coming back was, they played him off ball a lot. I think the pitch this year was, hey, Colin Simmons is on the other side. You're going to get a lot more sacks this year. We're going to let you put your hand in the dirt a little bit more. And I think a guy that we could have put in this group is Brad Spence. I think Brad Spence is actually going to be the guy that takes more of the Trey Moore role where he plays a little bit of both. I think they're going to say to Trey Moore, hey, put your hand in the dirt a lot more, get after the quarterback. And you got Colin Simmons on the other side. And heck, if he wants to sub out, then you put Colton Bosick in or Ethan Burke or whoever. Like this position group is literally like 5 to 6 deep of guys that I trust. Like if they started a game, I'd be perfectly fine if they started a football game, which is insane. Texas has not had that probably ever, honestly, that deep. I think they've had deep classes, but they've never had it this deep.
No, I mean, Texas has had really talented, like flashes of defensive ends. I think you think of Brian Arakpo, you think of Brian Robinson, Sergio Kindle, right? That group in the early 2000s, right? But like they've never. This is legitimately 6 or 7 deep at the edge position. It's absolutely ridiculous, and we've got Colin Simmons for another. Not just like we're talking about this in linebackers, right? Anthony Hill's probably gone after next year, right? But like getting Colin Simmons at this level of production for 2 more years, like Texas fans, we are spoiled at the edge position, and it feels good to finally be able to say that.
Okay, so I got to put you on the spot. I want you to answer 2 questions, I guess. Whole career, and then right now, who do you like more, Smith-Orogba or Lance Jackson?
Woo. I think right now Lance Jackson is my answer. Like, dude just came on campus and looked the part. Like he fit right. He was there for the playoff run on the sidelines, and you couldn't pick him out, right? In a good way. You couldn't pick him out of the lineup because he just looked like he had the goods. He is a stud. If he is anything like his brother has been at Arkansas, right, he's going to be incredible. Further career is tough because I like where Lance Jackson is now, but I think Smith-Orogba, if he can grow out of the puppy stage, I think he has an opportunity to be an all-timer at the edge. But again, I think where Lance Jackson starts his career gives him a little bit of a bump. So I think I'm struggling to put a fine point on this, but I think right now Lance Jackson, I think long-term, Smith-Orogba has a really high ceiling.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think Smith-Orogba I think he's like 6'3", 215. Super good athlete, he's very bendy and twitchy, which is you like at the obviously the edge.
Long arms too.
Yeah, super long arms. Like I think something like crazy, like a 6'10" or 6'11" wingspan. So that's insane for his size. So he's a freak, and he hasn't even been playing football that long. I think he's been playing football for like 4 or 5 years, even if that. So I really like him long term. I agree. I don't think he's going to play very much this year. I think they're going to the person I think of is Ty Anthony Smith. Ty Anthony Smith kind of has that body type and build, and he really didn't play that much. He played on special teams. I think that's what you're going to see from Smith-Orogba. I think they'll put him in versus lesser teams and allow him to put his hand in there. But you're not going to see him versus Ohio State. You're probably not going to see him versus Florida, versus an Oklahoma. I just think right now he'd probably get physically dominated. And you don't want to, you can ruin someone like that. You throw him out there, and then, he starts questioning himself, and you never want to be in that position. And guess what? We don't have to put him in that position. We don't need him to play. He could literally not play at all this year, and we'd be perfectly fine. But I love him long term.
Yeah, I think he has got. I mean, the word freak probably needs to like be gone from our vocabularies, but like that is the only thing I can describe it as, like just the physicality, the body type, the mold. Like I really am excited to see what he develops into, because he could be a lot of things for Texas. I mean, whether he's standing up, whether he's putting his hand in the dirt, like the dude has all of the physical advantages that he needs. And so once he gets in the strength and conditioning program, when he gets a good college nutrition program on him, I'm excited to see what he develops into, because he could absolutely just be the prototype of what you want at a defensive end.
Yeah, and guess what? If he doesn't work at edge, like he doesn't have great pass rushing skills, I think DeMarvion Overshone is someone he could be. Like he's got that type of athleticism and versatility, and honestly body type. So he's just a freak athlete. You got to find how to use him, and I'm sure they will. They've done a great job of that on staff, so I have no questions about how they'll do that. So that is the defensive line battle. We're going to get into the linebacker battle next, which last year, listen, we said Anthony Hill, David Benda, and then couple question marks. It's pretty clear. It's Anthony Hill, Leona Lafau, and then Anthony Smith. I got to see a little bit more, but I did like what I saw. And then you bring in freshman Elijah Barnes, you bring in freshman Jonathan Cunningham, but I think it's more long-term. And then Brad Spence as well, which I said, I think he plays a little bit of a Trey Moore role. What do you think about this room?
Yeah, I mean, the top end is really good, right? Anthony Hill is Anthony Hill. Texas fans enjoy every snap, because this is probably the last year that you're going to get to see Anthony Hill in burnt orange, and we're glad for that, right? Like he will be an early round pick, and we're very happy to see it. I think he still has some room to develop in the passing game. We saw that in the Ohio State game, where they found some stuff that they liked against him. So that is something. It's great to be able to say Texas has one of the best linebackers in the country, and he can get better. Like that's a really good problem to have. So if Anthony Hill can develop a bit in his pass coverage this offseason, then the kid is going to be absolutely insane. I love Leona Lafau. That kid is a monster. He's a thumper. He's mean. He's nasty. He's the kind of guy who's just going to come in and do the dirty work. Some of the run fits and the thumps that he put on people in run fits this year, just put an NSFW tag on him. Like, it was just absolutely incredible to watch. And of the rest of the guys that you mentioned, the guy I think I'm most excited about is Elijah Barnes. That kid, if you haven't, like if you're watching live right now, finish the live and then go to Huddle and watch his tape. That kid comes to campus, and I think he is a guy who you're going to see a ton of next year. That dude is already highly developed, and he's got all those things you want. He's aggressive. He loves to hit. He's an able tackler. He uses his body really, really well. He is not quite as polished and high ceiling as Anthony Hill was coming in, but if Anthony Hill was like at an A+, this guy's probably at a B+, maybe an A- when he comes in. I think he's going to be a guy you're going to see a ton of next year.
Yeah, he's definitely going to have to play. Like you saw Texas this year use three guys pretty often, Benda, Lafau, and then Hill. You're going to see Hill, Lafau, and then I think it comes down to Bo Barnes or Anthony Smith for that third spot. And we'll see who wins that. But I agree, Anthony Hill has to get better. And when he's dropping into zone, sometimes he drops too far. Sometimes he doesn't drop far enough. So he's got to get better with the feel of that. Yeah. Overall, though, the guy's a spectacular player. I mean, he had 7.5 sacks, over 100 tackles. And that was with the extra games. I really think in the regular season, you're going to see him have like 100 tackles and 8 sacks. Like, I think that's perfectly capable. Those are perfectly capable stats for him to have. And he's just a freak. Guy that's 6'4" should not be able to run sideline to sideline like that. And just based off of measurables, he's not going to be at Texas next year. At worst, like if he puts on the same film that he had this year, he's a 2nd-round pick. That's what he's going to be at worst. So don't get used to him sticking around. Just enjoy, like you said, Gerald, enjoy having him around. And then again, Lafau, he needs to put on about 10 pounds. If he puts on 10 pounds, we're talking about a guy that can be not as good as Anthony Hill, but he can be in that tier below Anthony Hill of like all-time Texas linebackers.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't doubt his ability to put on weight because he's done it already. I think he just needs to get a little bit. There are quotes out there from his dad about not having to worry about him putting on weight. Have him eat a couple of meals and he'll be fine. You'll have to Google for those. I won't share them here. But he's a kid that, again, I think is everything you want out of a linebacker from a mentality-wise. And I think he's got a great mind and a great eye for the run game. He's able to make those run fits. Again, I think Texas is going to have something to watch on the pass defense from both of those linebackers. But he's a guy I could not say enough good things about Leifau. A friend of mine, Daniel Seahorn, writes for Burnt Orange Nation. He and I have a text thread just talking about and sharing Leona Leifau highlights because we love that kid. He's a thumper, and I love him to death.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting because I think that is the weakness of this room is like it pass getting back and dropping into pass coverage. We'll have to see who that person is. It's funny because David Benda, that was a weakness for him, and he was way better this year than he was in the past. And you saw that in the Ohio State game, dropping into coverage, picking it off. So hopefully one of those guys can develop and do something like that.
And it's wild because like 3 years ago, Texas had Jalen Ford, who was one of the best pass defensive linebackers I've seen in I can't, it's probably 15 years, right? So like, I wonder what that's going to look like and how Texas is going to develop one of these guys to be that, because that is that's almost like found money in a lot of ways. If you have a linebacker that's good in pass coverage, I just need you to not suck, right? We say that a lot. Like we just need you to not get picked on by Will Howard in a game, and I think we're fine.
Yeah, 100%. It's going to be interesting. I think another guy that can play into this, because I think he's kind of a tweener, is Jonah Williams, the freshman. We'll get to him at safety. I think if he bulked up, he could probably do a little bit of that. If you wanted to use him as like a linebacker on third down situations and make him like drop into coverage and cover the tight end or the running back out of the backfield, I think he could do stuff like that. So we'll have to see. But overall, I like this room. Jonathan Cunningham, to me, is the one guy I don't think you're going to see much again. It's all about turning in or making this guy turn into who do you want him to be. He needs to put on weight. He's not super big right now, but he's a really good athlete. He's like Smith Orogba on the edge in the edge class. What do you think of him?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think he is a guy, and Texas is in a good position to have some guys with a longer development curve, right? Because you bring a guy like you have Ty Anthony Smith in the room, you have Bo Barnes in the room, Leifau is going to be around for another year. So you're able to have a guy like him who I think has the body type and like the physicality, or I guess the physicality to become who you need physically, right? Like he's got the body type to put on the weight, to put on the size, to develop the feet that he needs. And so Texas is in a solid, especially with how Texas plays linebackers in this defense. You're going to play at most 3-ish guys in a game. So, you've got Hill, you've got Leifau, and then question mark, who's your third, right? Smith or Barnes. So I think he's got an opportunity to sit, to watch, to observe. And there's something to be said about getting to sit behind a guy like Anthony Hill and watch him and develop. So I'm excited, not for this year, but I think for next year and the year after, very excited.
No, I agree. And this is the thing too, like you got to look at who other people are looking at in recruiting. Like Utah was all over this guy, and Utah, guess what? They know what they're doing defensively. They usually have some pretty damn good guys defensively that they turn out to the NFL. So long term, I really like Jonathan Cunningham. I like that we won that recruiting battle over Utah. So I agree. I think he's going to be a really good player. He just got to be patient as well. The staff has to be patient, and I'm sure they will. But, it's kind of hard for these young kids sometimes to, take a year, maybe even 2. And I'm hoping he does that because I think he's turned into a special player at Texas.
You're absolutely right. I think, again, patience is a virtue. Not a ton of it out there in college football right now. But if he can sit and wait, I think he's going to be great.
100%. Guys, this is the 39th edition of Texas Longhorns Live. We really appreciate you being here. Please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. Also, check out the Amazon link in the description. Does not change the buying process or experience. All it does is put a little bit of change in a Mark Rogers pocket. So please check that out. We really appreciate you guys doing that. And let's get to this room next, the cornerback room. We lost a Thorpe Award winner. How are we going to replace that? Gerald, what do you think about this room?
How do you don't replace Jahdae Barron, right? That's not a thing you do. You mitigate the losses and see what happens. I think the guy who I'm like most curious to see this year is Jalen Gilbo. I think Jalen Gilbo has been a font of untapped potential at this point. Like he's been good, and we've seen flashes, and he played in that nickel spot in this defense. He played a little bit of corner in this defense, and he played pretty well, right? But I think from what we expected from Jalen Gilbo, and I think from what we heard about Jalen Gilbo going into this last season and this season, I want to see more. And I think the ceiling for him is pretty high. And I think he's going to be the guy who really, especially as we talk about just replacing Jahdae Barron specifically, I think he's the guy who's going to have to be the one to step in those shoes. And it sucks and it's unfair to like Jahdae Barron has been the most underrated corner 3 years running, and he finally just got recognized for it. So the fact that like you have to step in, and Jalen Gilbo's not, he's a guy who's got a lot of confidence. He's a guy who's got a lot of belief in himself. So I don't think he's going to be daunted or intimidated by the ask to do it. But I think Texas fans need to remember and be patient with the fact that like Jahdae Barron made a lot of things look better than they probably could have been in some ways, just because of his ability, both in the pass and the run game is going to be something interesting to watch. Jahdae Barron was one of the better open field tacklers I've seen in a very long time. And so Texas fans, we have to remember, like, Jahdae Barron was a special guy, and asking anybody to replace him is going to be a Herculean task. So letting Jalen Gilbo grow into that, the test is going to come early in Columbus. That's a scary thing to say out loud, but I think Jalen Gilbo is the guy who's probably going to have that fall on his shoulders.
Yeah. So do you think he's going to slide outside, or do you think he stays at nickel? Because I think there's that possibility he could slide outside and then we put someone else at nickel. I mean, we saw that with Jahdae Barron. What do you think?
Yeah, I would like to see him stay at nickel. I think it's probably his best position, especially with Manny Muhammad, with Kobe Black potentially. Like there I think are more guys that can play the outside well than can play the inside well. I think when you look at like drop off from Jalen Gilbo at the nickel to the next guy down to Jalen Gilbo on the outside of the next guy down, I think the drop between Gilbo at nickel is bigger than the one that Gilbo on the outside. So I think leaving him at the nickel is probably the right move, especially with the number of bodies that I think can play at the outside. Like I said, Manny Muhammad and Kobe Black is a pretty solid pairing. So I think that's probably what I would hope to see. But again, we may see somebody sprout in practice in spring. You never know. But as it stands right now, again, 6 weeks before spring practice starts, that's what my read is.
No, I agree. I don't know. See, this is what people talked about last year with Jahdae Barron. They said, does he have the foot speed? I was totally against that. I thought he did. And I thought he'd be great on the outside. I think he's just a really smart football player. Do I think he's the best athlete? No. And I think he's what I can already tell you what's going to happen with him. He's going to run a slightly bad 40 time, and people are going to overreact and be like, man, he's not that quick. And I'm going to say, put on the tape, because it doesn't matter. He knows how to take angles. When he gets there, he delivers a boom. He is not scared to tackle. So we're definitely going to miss him. And I don't know if Jalen Gilbo can slide outside like he did. So I agree. I think we should keep him there. And I don't even know who would take over the nickelback position if that happened. Like Warren Roberson, maybe I would be my guess would be number 2, but I'm not 100% sure of that. On the outside is going to be interesting to me with this. Is it going to be Kobe Black or this guy? I've already been hearing rumblings of this. Cade Phillips, the freshman coming in, high 4-star, low 5-star, depending where you see. Everyone that's been talking to his high school coaches or anything like that has been saying this guy is ready to play right away. This guy has the tools to play right away. What do you see from Cade Phillips? And do you think he can be that guy that plays on the outside and maybe, just takes over for Kobe Black because we think that's who that's going to be right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think Cade Phillips has everything you want to see from a skill position guy, from a cornerback coming in and making the jump. And this is not meant to be reductive of the position, but I think it's as a young guy, as a true freshman coming in, like cornerback is one of those spots where you see those guys that are able to make the jump easier. Again, we saw Manny Muhammad do it 2 years ago, where he came in and he was a starter coming out of camp, right? So I think there's an opportunity for Phillips to come in and be the guy. I'm a big believer in Kobe Black, though, and I think the advantage, Texas does usually play 3-ish corners, 4-ish corners in a rotation. So I think you're going to see both of them regardless and see them get a significant number of snaps. Again, I think Kobe Black is one of those guys that I want to see take that next step, and I think has a lot more in the tank than we've seen from him. And if Phillips, and I'll just say it like this, if Phillip comes in and beats him out, Phillip comes in and beats him out. A rising tide raises all ships. And so whoever wins that, whoever's the better man for the job wins it. I won't be upset. I think Phillips has the opportunity to come in. Dude has a great vision, great awareness. He's very quick. He's very good at closing. He can high point balls. Like, he's got a lot of the things that you want from that type of corner. So again, I think if he comes in, spring practice, we're still 6 weeks away. So he's got an opportunity to come in and really blow things up in that room. But again, my money, just based upon experience, is probably going to be Kobe Black, but I wouldn't be shocked to see if it goes the other way.
No, and Kobe Black has elite traits. I mean, the guy's 6'1", he's long, rangy, fast, has a brother who was good at Oklahoma State as well. So
Yep.
all that plays into it, and I think he is going to have a good year. Like, I was impressed when he did come in and play a little bit. We really used, I would say, 3 main corners, and then he came in spot decisions for him, or spot play for him. Obviously, losing Gavin Holmes too is going to be a big deal, because when he came in, he played much better this year than he did last year. He was not very good last year when he came in. You saw a pretty big drop off. This year, you really didn't see that much of a drop off between him and Malik Muhammad, and I think that's a little bit of both. I think Gavin Holmes got a little bit better, Malik Muhammad got a little bit worse, and that's a guy. Let's talk about him. I think he's got to step up a lot. Like, this guy was the first 5-star guy at cornerback to come to Texas in like 12 years, and I think he's done well, but I don't think he's played anywhere near the potential that we thought he had coming into Texas.
Yeah, I think we saw a bit of a regression, I think, from year 1 to year 2. And you see that from time to time where a kid plays really well early and then kind of has that sophomore slump for whatever reason. I'll just say it like this. It could be a contract year for him, right? If he comes out and plays really well and turns back into Manny Island, then I think this could be a big contract year for him. Because let's be honest, like, shutdown cornerbacks get paid in the NFL. They do. It is what it is. Like, he's got an opportunity to come out and make some generational wealth for his family. And so we see some guys in that contract year really step it up. We saw for Texas at a couple of spots this year. So I think Manny Muhammad has an opportunity to cement himself as one of the guys that we talk about. We talk about DBU at Texas. He got picked on a little bit in some of the, we saw it in the Clemson game specifically. He did not look good. Clemson found something they liked in his game that they just like to pick on. So that's something to keep an eye on, because I think he's got we talk about, he's got all the physical traits, all the attributes. He's got everything you want. He's tall, he's rangy, he's got long legs, he's got good closing speed, he can high point balls. I think it might be a physicality thing. I think it might be which is honestly a lot of times a mental thing. So I wonder if there's something that can happen between the ears that needs to flip to get him to play a little bit more physically, a little bit more aggressively, and really be the guy that we know he can be.
Yeah, and I brought up, you saw him struggle versus Clemson. You saw him struggle a little bit versus Arizona State, but you saw him play well versus Ohio State, whether it's a mental thing of locking in, like, these guys aren't really at where I am. I don't really need to take this as seriously in your preparation. And then you get out there and you realize, oh, maybe that's not the case, because he played really well in the Ohio State game. Yeah. Was he asked to do something a little bit differently in that game than the other games? Yeah. When he was on Jeremiah Smith, he always had a little bit of help, but I don't know. It's weird with him. He's inconsistent. That's always kind of been at Texas. Consistency is kind of like Alfred Collins. If he plays up until that elite level like we know he's capable of, he's going to be a really good football player. I want to bring up 2 more guys. Santana Wilson. Obviously, Adrian Wilson was a fantastic safety in the NFL for a very long time. That guy was in the NFL for like 15 years as a safety. He almost played till he's like 40 years old as a safety. So he's got a lot of help there with his dad being a really good professional football player. I think he can play a lot this year. I think he's one of those guys that could sneak up, and honestly, he could even play that outside cornerback position and take over Kobe Black. He's got that type of skill. What do you like about him?
Yeah, I think everything you just mentioned, right? There's something to be said about coming from a pedigree. Watching your dad, you've got the best coaches. It's why we talk so highly about Arch Manning, right? You get more football knowledge at Thanksgiving than you do from any sort of camp. But I think that's he's got a body that you like that can play physical. The SEC is a very physical league on the outside. We see them letting a little bit of contact go, and I think that's an advantage for a guy like him who can play a little bit more physically, who can use his body, who can use his hands and his range to kind of be annoying to wide receivers and not get called for it, which is a great thing to happen. So I think he's got an opportunity to like you said, move outside, to try to be that, to be not a shutdown corner. I don't know if he has that in him quite yet. I think he's got it in him maybe long-term in a couple of years, but I think he's got an ability to use that physicality, to use his body, to use, again, what the good Lord has gifted him with, to be a bugaboo for some wide receivers in a league that generally lets you play a little more physically.
Yeah, 100%. And this is the last guy we'll talk about on this list. Caleb Chester. I really like this guy. He was only a 3-star recruit, or a high 3-star recruit, maybe not even high, but like mid-tier 3-star recruit. But he's 6'3", long, rangy, athletic, can play the ball really well. I watched a little bit of his tape, and I remember making the recruiting video about it. I'm all over this guy. I think this guy long-term is going to be a fantastic player for Texas. I don't think he plays into it this year because, again, You have Cade Phillips. You also have Grayson Littleton coming in as a freshman. You have Santana Wilson, sophomore, Wardell Mack, sophomore, Kobe Black, sophomore, Warren Roberson in there, Manny Muhammad, and Jalen Gilbo.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if there's much room for him to get in there and play this year. But again, like Jonathan Cunningham, like Smith the Roadbow, I think this is that guy at the cornerback position where he can play, but he's just got to wait his turn. And I think he's going to be really good when it is his turn.
And he's got that one thing you can't teach. He's pretty fast for a guy of his size, right? 6'3", and I think he ran like a 23 second 200. Like, the guy's got some speed on him. It's like, you can't really teach fast. So the advantage of having a guy who's 6'3" and can also run, right? That's what you want. That is the makings of a guy who can lock down a side of the field. And so he's got an opportunity to do that again. I don't think it's this year. It may not even be next year. He's got a little bit of a longer development curve. He needs to come in and really hone his body a bit and really learn the position. And this is not meant to be a shot at a kid or anybody like him, but like guys that are just that physically bigger than other players don't have to be as concerned with their technique. And so I think you see some of that when you watch his tape, because he's covering, again, a 5'10" kid who just got out of Spanish 2, right? Like, that's just what he's doing. So he's got 5 inches on you. He doesn't really have to do a lot to lock you down. And so he's got some development to do, but you see the flashes, you see, again, and you can't teach 6'3", you can't teach speed. Like, it just is what it is.
Yeah, 100%. It's going to be very interesting. So that is the cornerback room. Let's get to, in my opinion, I think it's the second best room on the defense, might be a top 3 room on the whole team. And that is the safety room. I think this room is really, really experienced, and they're also talented. Let's talk about that. Obviously, Michael Taft coming back, Jelani McDonald. That's a guy actually that could, if they wanted to, throw him into nickel. I think he could play nickel. Yeah. He's a really good football player. Derek Williams coming back off the ACL surgery. Jordan Johnson-Rubel, Zulus Hicks, and Jonah Williams. This is a super talented, experienced, and deep room with the younger guys that I just mentioned as well.
Yeah, and don't you forget my guy Xavier, right? Xavier Filson. He's a guy who I want to see. He's another just athletic freak, I think, back there. This is a room that I think Texas can get really creative with, and I think you may see, like you said, Jelani McDonald play down a little bit. You may see Jonah Williams walk down a little bit because Texas has the bodies, right? You have the advantage of having Michael Taft, Derek Williams back there as your probably 2 starters at safety. So there's an opportunity for Texas to really – and Pete Kwiatkowski is a guy who loves when you can just have a football player. They're not tied to a position. Right? Hey, we're gonna pull a linebacker and play Jonah Williams at safety for a play, right? Or we're gonna pull a linebacker, we're gonna pull a corner and have Jelani McDonald walk it down a little bit. There's an opportunity to be able to do that. And so this room for Texas, I think, I'm just gonna say it like I wish there was a couple of more snaps in this room than there are, right? You obviously have Michael Taft, who's been there for forever, but Derek Williams missed time with an injury. Jelani McDonald got to play some, but I think I wish there were probably 15% more snaps in this room, and I'd feel better about it. But from a pure talent perspective and from a pure ability perspective, this room has probably, and I'm going to say this right, this room might have the highest ceiling of all of them just based upon the accumulation of talent in that room.
Yeah, I mean, Jonah Williams, 5-star. Zulus Hicks was a 5-star before he reclassified. He's the high 4-star now. You have Derek Williams, who I believe was either a 4 or 5-star. Jelani McDonald was a 4-star. Michael Taft obviously wasn't that highly rated. And then, Xavier Filson was a 5-star. So they have a lot of talent in this room. And I agree. There's a lot of versatility and positionless football that can be played with this room. I think you're going to see, honestly, Jelani McDonald at the nickelback position. I also think you're going to see him, like you said, come down a little bit. He's a very versatile player. He also can tackle very well. I'm very excited to see him play next year. I think he's going to take a really big step, and he probably, honestly, early on, it's going to be him and Taft, and then they're going to allow Derek Williams to slowly come back from the injury, because I don't know if he's going to be 100% at the beginning of the year, the first 2 to 3 games, but we'll have to see about that. But also, Derek Williams is a freaking great football player. We definitely could have used him. Are we going to miss Andrew Makuba? Yeah, because I don't know if there's going to be a guy on this team that can roam around like that and then just find where the football is and go make plays on it, or just blow the ever-living crap out of someone.
Goodness, man.
Yeah, I don't know if that person exists on this team, honestly, because Michael Taft, no offense, doesn't have the speed to do that. Maybe Jelani McDonald. Maybe. I think he's going to need a little bit more thumping ability, but what do you think overall about, like, if you had to guess, do you think Zalous Hicks plays much this year, if any, or do you think he sits most of the time?
I mean, I think Texas is in a spot in the safety room where you only play him if you have to, right? And there's two ways you say have to, right? Because he comes in, blows the doors off, and it's absolutely better, or the wheels fall off and you have multiple injuries, right? I think I don't anticipate seeing a ton of him unless Texas has to. Now, obviously, with the redshirt rules, we probably will see some of him, quite a bit of him, I would say, maybe in some of these non-conference games or in some of these games where Texas has a decided advantage, because you can play a couple of games and still get your red shirt. So I think he's probably a prime candidate for like the 4-game red shirt situation. And I like that. Get some guys some live fire reps, but also don't burn a year of eligibility. So I feel like he's probably a prime candidate for that.
No, 100%. And Jonah Williams, do you think long-term, I know people might get angry about this, but do you think he should play baseball, football, do both, or do you think he should stick to one? Because I don't know if you can do both long term.
I mean, Jameis Winston's a guy who played both. Kyler Murray's a guy who played both. But then you see a guy like Brendan Thompson, who's obviously not quite as talented, but he ran track instead of doing spring football, and he got passed up not once but twice at multiple schools. So like, I think the days of multi-sport guys are probably waning. But then there are also few guys that are as athletically gifted as Jonah is. So I don't know. This is my bias, right? I think there's probably more. I don't know. I would rather see him play football. I'm a football guy over a baseball guy at Texas. But again, I'm not mad if the baseball team is good either. I think at some point, I think he's probably going to have to choose if he wants to be excellent at one of them. Because again, not everybody can be Deion Sanders and Bo Jackson, right? So you've got to pick one if you really want to be excellent.
Yeah, I mean, if he is, then awesome. We got a hell of a football player and a hell of a baseball player. Yeah. So if he can do that, but yeah, and that's the thing too. I think he loves football more too, because there was that discussion. People thought honestly he would just skip over college football in general and he would have got drafted out of high school and left. He decided not to do that. So he's telling you
he
right
wants
off
to
the bat,
play.
yeah, he wants to play football. That's pretty clear to me. And that's the thing too, is from everything I've heard, I think he wants to play shortstop and pitcher. I think you can play pitcher, because Jameis Winston did that. You can play pitcher and play football. I think that's possible, because you don't have to take as much time out for baseball if you're just a pitcher. But if you want to be a position player for baseball and a position player for football, it's going to be really hard to do that long term.
Yeah, I'm a skeptic when it comes to it. I mean, granted, guys like Jamal Charles had to make a choice in college. Guys like Aaron Ross had to make a choice in college which one they wanted to do. So like there is something to be said about like, if you want to live up to your potential at one of them, you probably have to choose to be specialized. Now, again, there's a longer conversation to have about like youth sports and specialization, but at the collegiate level, you've got to be a specialist. You've got to figure out which one you're going to be excellent at and choose. And again, I will be happy either way. Again, I watch more football than baseball, but I also love watching the baseball team. So if he goes that way, more power to you.
No, I'm the same way. And yeah, I think when you're younger, play as many sports as you can, because I think it helps other sports when you're playing as many sports as possible. But when you get older, you got to start trimming that fat off and decide which one you want to do. But another thing, so Texas usually plays 4 safeties. You usually get about a 4-man rotation there. You're going to have Taft, McDonald, and Williams. Who do you think is the one guy that rotates mostly and is the 4th safety?
I mean, I really like Filsaime. I think it's probably him. I think he's just got – I honestly was shocked we didn't see more of him this year, to be honest with you. I think it was just so much talent, right? Makuba and Taft, you can't take them off the field. So I would be shocked if it's not him, just because he's got such talent. He's got size. He was a really polished player coming out of high school already. And so I think his starting point was just ahead of the other guys. So I think Filsaime's probably going to be the guy. There's a reason why everybody in the country wanted him.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that. Yeah, I was shocked we didn't see him too. I thought that was one guy like the last 3 to 4 games of the regular season, you would have seen him play a lot more. And I think that's just because we're really deep there. Now, Derek Williams did get hurt and he still didn't really get put in. So we'll see. Maybe he just doesn't work out at Texas, but Jordan Johnson-Rubel, like if he doesn't win in spring, you may see him portal out, because he's been there for a couple of years and you can't sit forever. You got to eventually play or transfer out.
And I won't blame him, right? I'm never one to blame a kid who gets passed on the depth chart and wants to go somewhere else to try again. Like, not every relationship is meant to last. That is what it is, right? And more power to him. That's why I'm always an advocate for the transfer portal. And once you hang up your cleats, you're never putting them back on. So you can play your career out how you want to.
No, 100%. Again, guys, please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. It really helps out the channel. This has been the 39th edition of Texas Longhorns Live. Again, check out the Ohio State and Michigan channels at the Voice of College Football. They will be having that everything show a week from today at 6 p.m. Eastern time. So please check that out. Also, give us a follow on X or Twitter right there. That's my handle, Voice of College Football. And then you also see Gerald's right here, as well as his podcast. You can find that anywhere where you can find podcasts, Spotify, Apple, anything like that. So please check that out as well. And then, guys, check out the Amazon link in the description. Does not change the buying process or experience. We really appreciate you guys being here. We will be here next Monday, again, 8 p.m. Eastern time, breaking it down for you. If there's any breaking news, we'll chime in as well. So please, guys, hit the like button, subscribe down below. And as always, hook 'em.
Hook 'em.
Ohio State, Michigan, the greatest rivalry in sports deserves the greatest debate in sports. Monday, February 17th at 6 p.m. Eastern time on the main channel. It's the Ohio State, Michigan all-everything debate with me, taking your calls all night if it takes all night. I'm pulling no punches, so beware. Bring your best intel. It's the Ohio State, Michigan all-everything debate. It will be epic. February 17th, 6 p.m. Eastern time. Be there.